Senator Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I think it was Senator Fawcett who suggested that this is a question of getting the balance right, and we agree with him. We agree with Senator Fawcett. This is a question of getting the balance right. We need to assess the need for privacy against the needs to ensure that we keep our citizens safe. The reason that we're having this debate today is because we have got the balance wrong. We are not talking now about the activities of our intelligence agencies protecting Australian citizens. We're talking about the activities of our intelligence agencies involved in activities with some of our poorest neighbours in an effort to try and ensure that we get maximum financial advantage over negotiations that we have with a nation that is, let's be clear about this, one of the poorest nations on earth, in East Timor. I was fortunate enough to be in East Timor only recently. Young children there can't afford to get nets to prevent malaria, huge incidence of malaria. We've got an epidemic of HIV and an epidemic of TB in that nation. And here we are using the full force of our intelligence agencies to try and deprive them of an income to which they are absolutely entitled. And in the bitter dispute that we have with them about the ownership of the gas reserves between our two nations, we employ our security agencies to try and get maximum financial advantage for the people of Australia. That is not what our intelligence agencies have been set up to do. We have the balance very, very wrong. Now, in other parts of the world, we've got a situation where this issue of not just national intelligence agencies but a range of other corporations that have been involved in surveillance of its citizens has sparked outrage. We had in the US the National Security Agency using the PRISM program to spy on customers using Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, etc. And it caused outrage, not just from the usual suspects, not just from people who are concerned about civil liberties, but from the parliamentarians and leaders of those nations who ensured that they got US ambassadors called in to explain what indeed was happening. Here in Australia, the response has been stony silence. We've seen almost a conspiracy of silence between the Labor Party and the Liberal Party on this issue. I wonder how much of this stems from the relationship that we have with the US. I think the sign of a mature relationship is when you can stand up on your own 2 feet and voice your own view of these important international issues. We don't want decisions that were once made for us in London to be made for us in Washington. We've got a situation where the response to the debate has been we don't comment on international security matters. That despite the fact where in the NSA itself admits that there have been 15,000 violations of US law. We know what happened 3 weeks ago with The Guardian and the ABC, who broke the story about our government hacking the Indonesian president's phone and the phones of his wife and ministers. And there were indeed a number of commentators, and in fact many members of this place, who challenged the legitimacy of those media outlets to raise what have been very, very serious issues, not just serious moral issues, but illegal activities under Article 41 on the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, which says very, very clearly, without prejudice to their privileges and immunities, it's the duty of all persons enjoying such privileges and immunities to respect the laws and regulations of the receiving state. They also have a duty not to interfere in the internal affairs of that state. And yet here in this place, people challenging the legitimacy of those organisations who have reported this. Thankfully, we have newspapers like The Guardian who are now doing the job of what our parliamentarians should be doing. We've got, for example, the director of Big Brother Watch, Nick Pickles, who says that newspapers around the world, from The Guardian to The Washington Post and Der Spiegel, have done what our own Parliamentary Oversight Committee and other oversight bodies failed to do. They've exposed unprecedented surveillance being undertaken without the knowledge or approval of our elected representatives. It's also important to note here that our own Parliamentary Oversight Committee has not yet been established. So while that's been offered here as a justification for how these matters should be dealt with, we don't have one. We don't have yet a Parliamentary Oversight Committee. Now, a lot of the focus here has been on the role of the media, and in fact I note in one exchange with the editor of The Guardian, Mark Reckles, who he was questioned by an MP, Mark Reckles. It was Mr Rusbridger, who is the editor of The Guardian, was asked whether he loved his country. Well, I think the true act of a patriot is one who defends the principles on which our nations are founded, the principles that are those that mean that we live in a democratic country where individuals are free to communicate with each other without the fear of the overreach of the state. I think it is the definition of patriotism to stand up to state power, to stand up for the rights of the individual to express a view without fear of retribution from the powerful. And in fact, it is absolutely an act of true patriotism to have done what those media outlets have been doing. But this isn't just about the impact it's having on the leadership of those nations. It's also about what it does to the relationships between governments and their citizens. The Greens have got some, I think, very constructive ways of dealing with this issue. The first thing I'd like to draw the attention of this place to is the fact that while briefings have been offered to the leader of the opposition, as well as obviously the Prime Minister, the Greens have been denied a briefing from ASIO. In fact, Senator Scott Ludlam, who has been one of the most important voices in this national debate, has been denied a briefing from ASIO. At the very least, if both sides of politics want groups like the voices like the Greens to be satisfied that what is being done in the national interest, then surely they should be entitled to a briefing from our foremost intelligence agency. There are many other things that we can do. We can bring security agencies within the ambit of our Freedom of Information Act, and even the CIA and FBI don't enjoy the blanket protections that our intelligence agencies here enjoy. We should ensure security agencies in the reporting requirements of the TIA Act. We think that the Greens get a warrant bill should apply in the telecommunications space. I heard Senator Ludlam ask the question about the need for some of our telecommunications agencies or companies, the need to access data from them. He was asked, well, isn't that inconvenient that we should require a warrant to access telecommunications data? And Senator Ludlam said, in only the way that he can, that is the only thing that separates us from a police state. That small inconvenience is what separates us from being a police state. There are many other things we can do. Making sure that we promptly make data breach notifications mandatory. We make sure that we can also require Australian companies and IT providers to advise customers if they have agreements with foreign or domestic governments, and many other things. But what we need to do is to ensure that this issue is now seen not just through the prism of national security, but the huge infringement on the liberties of individuals in this country.